Hello, I'm Jeff Paur, senior writer with RealTime Fantasy Sports, and welcome to another edition of the RealTime Fantasy Sports Show. Today, I'm joined by Logan Glaser of RT Sports. Logan, appreciate you coming on the broadcast with me once again.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jeff. It's good to be back and talking football.
Yeah, we haven't done one of these in a little bit, but we're going to be ramping up the videos a lot as the season gets closer. We're going to do position previews. We're going to talk about sleepers, busts, you name it. We're going to go over it, and that'll all be in our draft guide, which launches on June 1st. But for today's video, Logan and I are going to do a little bit of a fantasy NFL draft recap. So we're going to look at each position. We're going to give you our favorite and least favorite landing spot for those rookies for this year. And then we're also going to talk about a couple players that we think see their value boosted after the NFL draft because of players that were picked or weren't picked. So we thought it'd be good to look at some of those veterans as well and who had their fantasy values impacted because of this draft. All right, Logan, before we get into that, we have all sorts of stuff going on here at RealTime Fantasy Sports. You can get in our fantasy championship once again, $500,000. Go to rtsports.com, click on that money league link to see all those leagues on there. We have our All-American leagues, high-stake leagues. Best Ball Championship is now open as well, but kind of tied in with this too, Logan, are our dynasty leagues. So we have a lot of dynasty leagues, and we have some orphan teams that you can pick up as well. You want to talk about how a user can get one of those orphan teams for those dynasty leagues?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we have over 500 Dynasty Orphan teams currently up for sale. So there's a ton of teams to choose from, completely different rosters for each one of them. The rookie draft in all these leagues is going to be on July 20th, and the final day to bid on these teams is July 1st. So that's definitely a date to write down to keep an eye out for because you can get some really good prices on these teams at a huge discount in these entry fees. You can also max bid for the entry fee and instantly take over that dynasty team as well. So what you'll do is you'll go under the football tab, click on money leagues, and then where the dynasty is, you can see teams for sale. If you click on that, it'll show you all the different teams. We've got player search options where you can search Justin Jefferson, and then all the teams that have Justin Jefferson will highlight. You can scroll over teams and see their team's rosters and their draft picks for the upcoming season.
Awesome. If you've never done a dynasty league, I highly suggest it. It's a different animal, different ways to play fantasy football. It's a lot of fun as well. And like you said, a lot of different options. You can pretty much pick your roster that you like from all these orphan teams. So it's a great option to play for fantasy football this year, in my opinion.
Yeah, you can basically guarantee your roster just by looking at those teams compared to normal snake draft. So it's definitely one of my favorite formats and definitely a popular one here on RT Sports.
Exactly. Again, go to rtsports.com, click on that money league link. You can see everything we have to offer on there. All right, Logan, let's get into the NFL draft now. So we're going to look at each position. We're going to break it down with our favorite and least favorite landing spot for some players for their fantasy value. So let's start with the QB position. I'll let you go first. I think there were some good options here, in my opinion, that a lot of quarterbacks landed some pretty good spots. Who's your favorite?
Yeah, I think we had 6 quarterbacks in the first 12 picks. It was a pretty crazy draft with offensive players, but my favorite target that I'm going to be looking at is Jaden Daniels. I think he gets in a perfect spot in Washington with that. QB rushing is very key in fantasy. The top 3 quarterbacks are Josh Allen, Hurts, and Jackson, who are all dominate on rushing, and that's exactly what Jaden Daniels does with that. He does have some weapons in Washington. He's got Austin Eckler, who's come over from Los Angeles, Terry McLaurin, Dotson, and they even picked up a wide receiver in Luke McCaffrey. So excited to see what he does as well. So I think this is a good spot for Jaden Daniels and should start week 1, depending on how training camp goes.
Yeah, for sure. My only concern with him is his size. He's kind of thin, but hopefully he does well and not taking too much punishment. We saw what happened to Anthony Richardson last year, and he's actually built pretty big, and Daniels isn't, but I love his talent. He's a super talented player for sure. My pick, I think everybody's pick is probably Caleb Williams, but we left him go because he was the number 1 overall pick. Kind of everybody knew it. He's in a great spot, lots of talent around him. They really upgraded in Chicago, so we'll be remiss if we didn't mention him. But mine is J.J. McCarthy with the Minnesota Vikings. I just look at the weapons: Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, T.J. Hawkinson. I know Hawkinson might be a little slowed early in the year, but holy cow, those are 3 of the best options in all of football when it comes to receiver and tight end for starting offense. McCarthy comes from a pro-style offense. He's going to start from day 1, in my opinion. I do not trust Sam Darnold to come in there and be their guy. So I think it's going to be McCarthy. I think he's going to come in, post some big games along the way, just has a great supporting cast. So he is my favorite landing spot rookie QB. I really think McCarthy's set up for good things there in Minnesota, and he's going to have a really good rookie season. All right. Least favorite landing spot. I picked the easy one. So I kind of hurt you there. But what about you? You got a guy that you don't like too
Yeah,
much
I
where
think
they
this
landed?
guy's still not great. He's currently going undrafted in fantasy leagues, and that is Drake May. He just has no offensive weapons on that Patriots offense, and with the style he has, I just don't see it great for fantasy value. I think for long term, he's going to be great for the Patriots, but until he gets some weapons around him for wide receivers and that offensive I just can't see you rostering him in a fantasy league. I think he is also going to be competing with Jacoby Brissett for week 1 starter. So there's a chance that Drake May might even start the first couple of weeks of the season until something happens with Brissett. So it's definitely a guy that I'm going to be avoiding in all fantasy drafts this year.
Yeah. They need a number one receiver. They don't have one. It's just, we saw what happened to Bryce Young last year when he didn't have talent around him. And I think it's kind of set up the same way for May, unfortunately. All right. My least favorite landing spot is the easy one. It's a softball, hit it out of the park. It's Michael Penix of the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, I don't know what the Falcons are doing here. They used this is the 8th overall pick, right? Or was
Eighth
it 9th?
overall pick.
8th.
Yep. 8th.
8th overall pick on Michael Penix after signing Kirk Cousins to a 4-year deal that was like $30 million a year. So you take a first round pick, top 10 pick on another QB. I don't get it. He's not going to be playing for at least a couple seasons. I know Kirk Cousins coming back from major injury, but it sounds like all indications are he's going to be ready for the start of the year. So he's their guy. He's their starting QB. And now they take Penix. It just doesn't make any sense to me, especially with the needs that they had on both sides of the ball outside of QB after addressing that this offseason. So it doesn't make any sense. Penix is going to be a bust, at least for the short term here. It could be a good pick still in dynasty leagues, but you might not get to use him for several seasons, unfortunately. So
Yeah, I think Atlanta was just scarred from that QB position from the last couple of years, where
so
they are
they
like,
went
if
overkill.
someone goes down, yeah, we want someone to keep the season alive.
Yeah, I don't get it. Just a head scratching pick there, but maybe they'll prove us all wrong. And it seemed like the owner wasn't too happy either after watching that video of him and the GM talking there. So that actually threw him by surprise as well. Just a crazy turn of events. But that's why the NFL draft is great. It's always fun to watch when stuff like that happens. And quite frankly, though, there weren't a lot of crazy picks this year compared to past years, in my opinion. It seems like a lot of the experts got it more right than in the past. Maybe I'm
No,
mistaken a little bit
I
there, but I
agree with
think it
that.
was a little more, chalk, as they say.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right, let's go to the running back spot now, Logan. That's always an interesting one. The running back spot this year, there was not a first round pick. There wasn't really that first round talent compared to receiver, but there's still some guys I think that can help fantasy teams and land in good spots. So, what's your favorite landing spot for a rookie running back this year?
Yeah, running back is pretty limited this year in terms of rookie values. Last year we had Robinson, Gibbs going very early,
Yep.
and this year is completely different with that. But my favorite running back spot is Trey Benson for Arizona. He was the second running back taken overall, 66th overall. He possesses power and speed, which is very lethal in the NFL with that. James Conner is going to be the lead back for Arizona, but he is 28. He's getting up there a little bit in age for a running back. So while Benson might not have extreme value this year, I think down the road and maybe 2 years, I think he'll have a starting role with Arizona with that. And I do think he will be the backup this year to James Conner, as currently the backup is Michael Carter. So I think he's going to beat out Michael Carter with his skill set.
I agree. I like that pick. Also, Connor's actually been kind of injury prone throughout his career. He's kind of shed that the last couple of years, but still, like you said, he's getting up there in age. And I worry about him holding up a little bit. I think Benson, I think he could help this year even. We'll see, but you're not going to use that high of a pick on a running back and not deploy him at all.
Yeah, if
So
you take him in the 66th overall, you're definitely going to have plans for him for this season.
exactly. And my favorite landing spot for running back is actually the first running back that was picked, and it's Jonathan Brooks with the Carolina Panthers. He's returning from a major knee injury. That's why he fell on the draft boards, but he could be a little slowed early in the year, but he lands in a great spot. Carolina, he has next to no competition. I mean, Chuba Hubbard and Miles Sanders, they were kind of a disastrous 1-2 punch last year. Now you get Brooks. He's a legit 3-down back. I think once he's healthy, he's really going to carry the load in that offense. He's going to get a lot of work, a lot of volume. I like him for the second half of the season more so than the first this year. So I still think I would take a chance on him as a low-end number 2 back just because of the volume I think he'll get. They've also upgraded the offensive line there in Carolina too. So I think Brooks is set up for big things there in Carolina for years to come, and I really like him as a fantasy player. All right, let's talk about least favorite landing spot now for a rookie running back. Who do you got there, Logan?
Yeah, I think there's several options that you could actually put here. There's a lot of teams that drafted running backs that have their star running back and they're just getting handcuff pieces. And the one that I'm going to go with is Braylon Allen for the Jets. He's basically just going to be a depth piece to Breece Hall. He's got a little bit of competition for that second back role, but I think the only reason why you take Braylon Allen in a fantasy draft is if you have Breece Hall and kind of handcuff him. Again, there are several teams that did this. Jalen Wright with Miami. You get Marshawn Lloyd with Green Bay, and Bucky Irving with Tampa Bay. So there's a lot of these teams that have that running back position established with starting running backs that were kind of just looking for depth pieces. And that's exactly what the Jets did here with Braylon Allen. So it's a guy that I don't love the landing spot for.
It's always interesting to me because that BBC Scout draft that we did, there's all sorts of running backs that were rated pretty high that you could take a chance on. But like you said, it was all about landing spot. And a lot of these guys that were the top rated backs, in my opinion, did not land in good spots. And they could have been in good situations. Like Dallas is the one that stands out like a sore thumb, sticks out like a sore thumb there, man.
Oh, yeah.
They had a chance to sew up that position. They did not take anybody. And any of those guys you just mentioned, if they would have went to the Cowboys, I would have liked them.
Yeah, it'd
But
be completely different. There was a lot of
exactly.
teams that mixed around running backs this offseason. There was probably the most hype around running backs or transactions around running backs this offseason that we've had in a long time. I feel like every running back's in a different spot than last year.
Yeah, you're right. It was a lot of movement. I have to think the Cowboys have something in mind about somebody maybe getting cut, a veteran or something that they're going to pick up because I don't know. I don't know if I feel too confident in Ezekiel Elliott, who I actually will mention later on in this video, but we'll get to that. So I'll go to my least favorite landing spot for running back. It's kind of for the same reasons you mentioned. It's Blake Corum with the Rams. So I still like him a little bit from a fantasy perspective because I think he could end up getting the goal line work, but I really thought he was a guy that was going to get a 3-down back job in the NFL from the get-go, but he's not going to with Kyron Williams around. Williams is still the lead back in that offense. He had a great season last year, breakout year. He is, a guy on the rise, but they just wanted to handcuff him with Blake Corum there. And I know Williams battled a little bit of the injury bug last year, so I think that had to have been a reason why they took Corum as well, but just not a good landing spot for Corum. I thought he had a chance to be a really good fantasy player his rookie year, but now it's just going to be more hit or miss. I think he's going to be a touchdown dependent player, unfortunately, in that Rams offense. All right, let's move on to receiver. We mentioned it already, Logan. You kind of talked about it too. It was a deep class, a lot of great options out there. I think there's players even later in the draft that could end up being helpful to fantasy teams just because of their landing spot. So there's a lot of good guys to pick from when it comes to favorite landing spot for rookie receiver. Who do you have?
Yeah, unlike running backs, this is a completely different flip. There's going to be tons of wide receivers going in these fantasy leagues. My favorite landing spot is Keon Coleman for Buffalo. They lost Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis this offseason. So Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel, and Shakir are the 3 wide receivers currently that's going to be starting for Buffalo, depending on any other transactions. There are rumors that they might have got Debo or Ayuk, even T. Higgins this offseason. None of that came fruit during the draft. So it's still definitely a wait and see if they go out and get another star wide receiver through trade. But as the roster stands, Keon Coleman's going to be seeing a ton of action in his first year with so many missing pieces on that wide receiver core. So it's definitely a guy that I'm going to be looking at in drafts. He's currently going around 8, 9. So his ADP has skyrocketed since that draft. He was going around ADP of 140, and now he's going around 90. So he has one of the highest jumps in terms of ADP value from the NFL draft.
I like Coleman a lot as well. I worry a little bit about his speed, but someone has to catch a ball in that offense, and he's going to be a good red zone target as well. It kind of reminds me a little bit of what Gabe Davis might, kind of was
Yeah.
the last couple of years. He could come and fill that role, but maybe get some more catches than Davis did. So you're right, though. Someone has to catch a pass. I'm kind of worried about Josh Allen a little bit because of that receiver core.
Yeah, I am too. I mean, we've seen in the past, if you don't have wide receivers that can go out and catch the ball, then
Yeah, not
the
good.
good news
So
about Josh Allen is he can also get it done on the ground.
that's true.
In terms of fantasy value. So
For sure. Ironically, I feel like my pick for favorite landing spot, very similar to Keon Coleman. It's Lad McConkey. So I was actually debating between Coleman and McConkey for my pick here. So I'm glad you picked Coleman. I like McConkey, though, for the same reasons. It's the exact same reason that you like Coleman in Buffalo is McConkey's got an opportunity for playing time. Keenan Allen's gone. He had tons of targets. I don't trust Palmer. I don't trust Quentin Johnston. He did not look good last year, in my opinion. McConkey's a good route runner, knows how to get open. He can really rack up the weekly looks in this offense, in my opinion. Someone has to fill that void of Keenan Allen. I think McConkey's going to get a ton of volume in that offense. Again, kind of similar to Josh Allen. I'm a little bit worried about Justin Herbert because of the pieces they're missing now in Los Angeles. So that kind of worries me a little bit. But I love McConkey for this year. I think he's going to have a big rookie season. All right, let's talk about least favorite landing spot for a rookie receiver. What are you thinking here?
So it's not a huge, it's a middle surprise. So I'm going to go with Xavier Legette, final pick of the first round. I just think the wide receiver room in Carolina is going to be a little bit crowded. They've got Deontay Johnson coming in from a trade. You got Adam Thielen, Jonathan Mingo. So those are three wide receivers right there with that. So Legette really thrives on the deep ball. So I do think he's going to be running a lot of deep routes. I think you're going to see a lot of games where he's hit or miss. Kind of like Mike Williams has kind of been over the past couple of years. You're either going to get a 20-point game from him or you're going to get under 5. So I think it's going to be a hit or miss with Legette in this offense. But again, I think the wide receivers room is just a little bit too crowded. There's a lot of average wide receivers there. They don't have a standout wide receiver, which is good. But I do think Deontay Johnson is going to be that number one wide receiver. But it's definitely a guy that I'm going to be fading that's currently going in near end of drafts around rounds 15 and 16.
Yeah,
So.
Bryce Young also, he looked at Adam Thielen a ton last year. I know he didn't have much to throw to, but it seems like he
Yeah, it was
had
a lot of short routes
yeah.
that he was kind of looking at. There was a lot of pressure in first year with Young, so we'll see. We'll see how he does in year 2.
Again, the same reason you pick your receiver for least favorite landing spots, the same reason I pick mine. I think the player I'm going to mention is extremely talented, going to be a really good NFL player, but I just worry about him for this year. And that's Roma Dunze with the Chicago Bears. So super talented. He has DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, though, to compete with for targets in that offense. Cole Kmet, too. So those are 3 really good pass catchers. I just think Dunze could have landed in a better spot to get more targets, more playing time. I still think he's going to be on the field a lot, but I just worry about him having erratic production, kind of like what you mentioned with Legette there in Carolina. So I think Odunze is going to be in the same boat. He's going to be hit or miss, could have landed in a better spot for playing time. I mean, I look at like Neighbors with the Giants. I like him more than Odunze and Legette because of the fact that he's the number one guy clearly, even though I don't like Daniel Jones, but Neighbors is going to get a ton of looks in that offense. And I just don't know if Odunze will, even though he's on the same talent level, in my opinion. So unfortunately, I think Odunze could be a little bit hit or miss this year, but Keenan Allen is injury prone as well. So if he would happen to go down again, Odunze would look really good in my opinion. But for now, I think he'll be hit or miss. All right, let's talk about tight end. We're just going to give you our favorite landing spot. It's a little bit more of a shallow position, but let's talk about a tight end that we think landed a good spot to maybe get some playing time this year.
Yeah, tight end I'm going to go with is Ben Sinnott for Washington. He was the second tight end selected overall in the draft behind Brock Bowers, 53rd overall. He was a leading receiver at Kansas State. He put up 676 yards, 6 touchdowns, and he's barely been playing tight end. He used to be a fullback, so he's transitioned to tight end. He had elite combo times. With that, Logan Thomas is gone. They did get Zach Ertz in the offseason, so there is a little bit of competition right out of the gate. But Ertz is 33. He's been injury prone the last couple of seasons. So if Ertz does go down, I expect Sinnott to step up and he'll be the tight end number 1 there. And he'll start as the tight end 2. But again, Ertz definitely injury prone. So if he goes down, all the room for Sinat in that offense.
I like that call. That was actually the player I was looking at in addition to the one I'm going to mention. That's Jatavion Sanders of the Carolina Panthers. So he went, I believe, in the 4th round of the draft, but he's a very good pass catcher. He's not much of a blocker, but he really catches the ball well, does well down the seam. Just a really athletic player. Did a good job at the University of Texas making some big plays. I think he's going to start from day one. They have next to nobody in that receiver room in Carolina. That Tommy Tremble, I believe, is atop the depth chart right now, but he's not a very exciting player. I know Sanders may be off the field a little bit because of his blocking, but man, when he's out there, he's going to get looks in that offense. They need playmakers, and I think Sanders is set up to have a good rookie season. We saw normally in the past, rookie tight ends can struggle, but last year kind of flipped that narrative a little bit with Laporta having a huge year. The number 1 overall fantasy tight end was Sam Laporta. So the days of rookie tight ends maybe not being huge fantasy factors might be over. And I think Sanders could be a good pick, maybe as a number 2 tight end for fantasy teams this year, especially if you get an established number 1. All right, Logan, we recapped the draft picks. Now, I wanted to talk about a couple players we think had their stock go up after the draft is over with for whatever reason. Maybe they're in a situation now where they're the main target at receiver, or they're going to be the number 1 running back, you name it, or if they got more pieces around them, they're a QB, maybe they had some weapons added through the draft, you think they like their value more. So we're going to give you a couple players that we think saw their value go up post-draft. So I'll let you give me your first player.
Yeah, so first one, we talk about him every year, and that's Kyle Pitts for me. Atlanta didn't do anything on offense besides adding Michael Penix. So the sky's the limit again for Kyle Pitts, as we say every single year, and we always get burned by him. But they have a new head coach this year with Raheem Morrison. You also got new quarterbacks in with Kirk Cousins, Michael Penix. So if something does happen to Cousins, you do have a backup quarterback, and Drake London's stock is also very high as well. So both these players are their stocks are very high for this season. London's going in the 3rd round. You got Kyle Pitts going in the 6th round in drafts. Pitts is being drafted as the tight end 6. So I'm going to be fading those top tight ends. I think there is so much depth in that tight end position this year. So I think the first tight end I would honestly be looking at would be Kyle Pitts in round 6 or below, because after him, you got Evan Ingram, George Kittle, Njoku. So there's just so much depth at that tight end spot this year. So I'm going to be fading that top tight end spot, but I really like Kyle Pitts as my first tight end off the board.
I think that's a good call about the tight end spot. Normally you don't see that at that position, but it's a lot deeper, a lot more younger, exciting players definitely coming into their own. All right, my person I saw, in my opinion, I think gets a big boost in their fantasy values, Ezekiel Elliott. Again, I mentioned it earlier. I don't know what Dallas was doing. They didn't take a running back in the draft at all. They signed an undrafted rookie after the draft, but they have Ezekiel Elliott, and that's pretty much it. I don't see Dowdle. I guess he'll be a factor. Maybe the scat back. I can't think of his name from Kansas State. Shoot. Whatever. But you know what I'm talking about. Small little back, catches the ball well. He didn't really play a factor last year, unfortunately. But Elliott looks like the guy. I think he's going to have good touchdown potential, at least. I don't know if he has much left in the tank. I thought he looked okay with New England last year at times. Caught the ball pretty well also out of the backfield. But Elliott's the guy. I mentioned it earlier. Maybe they're going to look at maybe a cut as training camp opens. Maybe somebody cuts a veteran running back or a surprise player, and they add them to the mix. But right now, it looks like it's going to be Elliott. He'll at least get the goal line work. I don't know if he'll start over Dowdle. I'm assuming he will, but it'll probably be a platoon messy situation in Dallas. But I think Elliott's value is pretty high because of that touchdown potential and a very good offense. So he's a guy I see getting a big boost post-draft because of the moves the Cowboys did not make. All right, give me your other player that you like coming out of the draft.
Yeah, other player I like is going to be Joe Mixon. So for the Texans, I think they're going to be one of the top offensive teams in 2024, and there really is no competition for Joe Mixon. Your backup running backs, you got Dameon Pierce, who kind of converted into a kickoff returner last year after having such a good rookie and sophomore seasons, and he just fizzled out of that starting role last year. But they did take a running back in the 6th round in Jordan from Louisville. I don't think he'll play a factor. I think it's kind of him and Pierce going to be battling it out for that second role, but the door is wide open for Mixon to get a ton of volume this year. They also got an offensive tackle taken in the second round to shore up the offensive line. So there's a lot to be excited about this Houston offense, and I think Joe Mixon is going to play a big part of that, and he's going to get a lot of goal line work for that offense.
I agree. I think that was his biggest asset last year with Cincinnati. Wasn't exactly super productive, but it got a lot of volume in the goal line work. I think it's a similar situation in Houston. Deuce Vaughn is the name of the Cowboys back I couldn't think of. I don't know why I was having a brain freeze there, but that's a guy. All right. I have another running back I like post-draft. That's Zamir White with the Las Vegas Raiders. They did use a 6th-round pick on a running back, but he's more of a depth piece. He's not going to challenge for the starter's job, but it looks like White's their guy. He showed well late in the year. I think he's going to be a pretty good option there for fantasy teams as a number 2 back. He can catch the ball well. He showed well between the tackles, has good speed to the outside also. So I think White's going to be the guy in Las Vegas. They did not use a high draft pick on a running back. He doesn't have much competition at the position as well. I think his stock's going way up after this draft. I think he could end up having a really good second season in the NFL. He looked pretty good at times last year as well, spelling Josh Jacobs when he was banged up. All right, Logan, that's our fantasy draft recap of the NFL draft there. A lot to talk about. We went over a lot of players, getting everybody ready for their drafts coming up here. You can do drafts right now on RealTime Fantasy Sports if you want as well, rtsports.com. Click on that Money League link, all different options, all different price points. So you can put this knowledge to use on there. Logan, again, appreciate you joining me. Really had a fun time talking with you today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. There's a lot to be excited about these rookies, some good landing spots and some bad. So definitely take that into consideration when you're doing your draft this year.
For sure. Adjust your rankings accordingly after this NFL draft. All right. Thanks again for watching. Appreciate everybody tuning in out there. Again, Logan and I are going to be coming out with a lot more videos here in the coming weeks as we ramp up towards the start of the season. And we always appreciate you tuning in and leaving any feedback as well. So this has been Jeff Paur with RealTime Fantasy Sports, and I really appreciate you watching, and have a great day.